Dr. Tanya Jones. I have, in my past lives, been a physician educator, professor of family medicine. I walked all the way up to the top of organized medicine in the United States and did things like chaired the Commission on Legislation and Governmental Affairs in Washington. I did a lot of consulting work with pharmaceutical industry and other corporations. But now I want to get to the story that took me there, and then the story that took me out of there. So that I think I have 15 minutes. So give me a 2-minute warning, Gertrude, when I'm getting towards the end, okay?
I'll tell you.
Okay. Well, so anyway, I was actually born of a mother who was one of 12 children and was on her own at age 13 because her father died. She was in West Virginia, farming family. My father was a coal miner in West Virginia. My mother was in Virginia. And so they both were tossed around different houses when they were young. But my father was actually a genius, and ultimately they got together in Bluefield, West Virginia, which is where I was born, and got married. And my father ultimately became one of the historic Tuskegee Airmen of World War II and flew around the world nonstop on a B-52 bomber. He got a Distinguished Flying Cross for that. My mother was a teacher, and we were sent, my sister, brother, and myself, and my family to integrate military bases. So in second and third grade, I was in Mountain Home, Idaho, back in 1952. So you can imagine what Idaho was like back then. The kids asked me where my tail was. They thought I was a monkey. But anyway, so that was a pretty tough time because I was actually had a lot of allergies and I was very sick. Let's go back to my grandmother. When I was a baby, I was allergic to everything, including the sun. And my mother took me to the hospital, and they told her, it was racist back in those days, and told her to take me home to die. My grandmother saved my life by smearing coal tar and sulfur all over me. I realize now I probably had infected eczema from all the allergies. But at any rate, that was my first introduction to alternative or herbal kinds of medicine. And then when I was a teenager, I babysat for a doctor, and I loved to read his medical books, especially the OB books that had the monster babies that were born, and they thought I was too young. But anyway, that was my first introduction to medicine. I always was interested in that, but I went to the University of California in Berkeley. I graduated actually in political science and international relations, got a master's in psychology, went to Loyola, got everything for my PhD except for my dissertation, decided I wanted to go back to medical school when I found out how the emotional health impacts your physical health. So after I had my first baby, I decided to try. I was later then, I was actually 30. And I thought, well, if I can be chairman of my department, which I was at that time of psychology, and I can take organic chemistry, which I hadn't taken at Berkeley because I was afraid I'd flunk out, and I can have a baby, I could probably do medical school, which is what I did. Worst year in my whole life. They crammed the first 2 years of medicine into one. People had nervous breakdowns. Half the class had to repeat. And it was just like, I'm thinking, what have I done? But at any rate, it worked out. I got through it. I toughed it out. Now, I did the traditional medicine. I started out as a practitioner in family medicine, and I let medical students come through my office. And I was a attending physician at one of the most prestigious hospitals in Chicago at that time, Rush Presbyterian St. Luke's Hospital. But at any rate, I got my second introduced to integrative medicine and the power of prayer and other things. When Big Daddy, he was the father of one of my good friends who didn't believe in doctors, but he'd gotten so ill that he agreed to come see me. And long story short, I felt Big Daddy's stomach and there was these big bumps all over. And I thought, well, maybe he's constipated, but he wasn't. He had cancer all over the place. So no money, no health insurance. I did things I probably wouldn't have enough courage to do now, but I gave him the chemotherapy. I worked with an oncologist and we did a lot of prayer, and all his cancer disappeared, which let me know, because it shouldn't have. Stage 4 like that doesn't just disappear. So it let me know there's something going on about healing other than what I have been taught and what I ultimately taught, because after that, I moved to Atlanta with my 2 sons, and I was a medical director for Morehouse School of Medicine, a Black medical school in Atlanta. And I was medical director for them. Then I became the director of training for family physicians because I felt no one was giving credit to your intuitive ability when you were doing healing. All healers in other professions and other traditions, they use other than just pills, you know, they actually help mobilize the patient's ability to heal themselves. And I had had personal experience with that. I'd had to use my intuition in a life and death situation where I could have been, you know, if I had been wrong, I would have been like strung up by the lawyers, you know, forever. But I wasn't wrong, and I saved a life because I did wait for imaging and all this sort of stuff. I went on and did what I felt was going on. So let's now jump back again to college. And in college, I had a dream. And in this dream, I saw this ditch with rats running over something. And I knew it was my brother, even though it didn't look like my brother. And I remember I woke up in a sweat. And I was just like, whoa, you know, and my brother himself told me when he was in his 20s, he says, I don't think I'm going to make it past my 30s. And so once I finished practicing and was getting ready to go to Atlanta to take the position at the medical school, I was out with my husband over a friend's house, and we were going to play Trivial Pursuit, which is a game I never opened the package because I felt something go through my head. And I just had the most horrible headache. I'd never had headaches before. So I went home. I was so sick the next day, I had to hire a babysitter to take care of my 2 sons. Later that afternoon, early evening, I got the phone call. My brother had been murdered in Texas, and I felt the bullet go through my head when he got shot, when they traced the timeline back. That was my first indication something different was going on with me, but I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it then. I had moved to Atlanta. My first boyfriend there, I had gotten divorced by then. And my first boyfriend was intuitive. And I didn't know that because I was having a good old time, but he knew everything I was doing. And so I thought, I better find out about this intuition. So my lady was helping me clean the house with the boys, told me about a woman. Her name was Victoria Western. She was one of the pioneers in psychic ability and writing and stuff like that back in 1984 or 5, excuse me. Anyway, I went to see her and she knew stuff about me no one knew, and it was amazing. And so I started reading all the books, you know, being the scholar. And then I saw this book, You're Psychic. And so I tried it, and sure enough, I was able to see out of my third eye. At that time, I didn't know it was my third eye. I just saw like a pinpoint open up into like a movie screen. So anyway, I just started playing with that. I found out that I'm clairaudient, clairsentient. Clairaudient means you can hear, inner hearing. Clairsentient means you just know things. You don't know how you know them. Clairvoyant means that you can see things that are coming in the future sometimes. And I have another one that I can never pronounce, clairnosience. I actually can smell things, you know, and that was interesting after I was having trouble with my teenage son, because both my father and my father-in-law were dead by that time, but they were watching over me because I was afraid he was getting seduced by the evil and he was going to be killed, because between his age of 16 and 19 kids he knew were killed. That was in Atlanta. The gangs were coming in, crack was coming in, a whole lot of stuff. And I was fighting to keep my son alive and out of that stuff. So anyway, my father-in-law, I recognized by his cologne, and my father, who, by the way, my parents divorced. I didn't see my father for 30 years, but he was still around, watching over me because I was doing stuff by myself at this point. Anyway, so those were some indications that I had something going on. But there was a dream I had that really kind of put it all together. And I'm telling you about intuition because I think this is going to be critical as we move forward post-COVID and post all the upheaval that's occurred worldwide. We're going to have to learn how to tap into our intuition and honor it as much as we do the analytical. I've been trained in a technique called integrative awareness, where you can bring up the analytical and the intuitive at will. Now, I don't use it all the time, but I found out I was using it in patients. And that's why I was voted the outstanding physician for the state of Georgia at about the time they were wearing the sheets and Ku Klux Klan people at the table. And I was outstanding clinician for the medical school too. And I got a lot of other awards. But bottom line is I'd been using intuition all along, but I didn't really realize it. And I say the other side, my guides, finally decided it was time for me to stop playing with it. And so they started to get a little stronger in their little nudges. I had this dream, and in this dream, I saw two women at a card table kind of thing. And I heard the word tarot. I didn't know what that was at the time. But the next day I had a meeting and I decided I wanted to get some Thai food for lunch after the meeting. And so I went and had that. And next door is a New Age store. So I thought, I'll just wander in there and get some incense. I wandered in there and got some incense, and the exact scene I'd seen in the dream was there. Now, it didn't feel like I was supposed to get a reading, but I did get a little cheap deck just to see what it was, because I didn't really know what it was. And I played with it, put it through the scientific method, got different cultures and different traditions, and I could ask questions and get very similar kinds of information. So I did that for a while until my guys decided that's enough. You're supposed to be doing more than that, playing with it. And so that's when I started having experiences that I didn't know what they were. I now know it's astro traveling or out of body types of things. But I just remember one time I got swooped out of my bedroom window, and I was out in space, and I heard like wings or something. And I saw the earth, and I was saying, oh my God, I hope whatever's holding me doesn't drop me. But at any rate, that really did scare me. And so I decided I would pray for a teacher, because I knew something was going on. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't schizophrenic. But something was happening. And so by a series of synchronicities, I got to a teacher who is now passed on. Her name was Consuela Newton. And she was my mentor to show me how to handle these gifts. They are gifts. And how to not let them control me, how I could put, barriers and limits to how much exposure I had. And so in my teaching of interns and residents, I actually tried to have them very much do the behavioral side, the emotional side of illness, because at every illness, there is emotional foundation that has created the dis-ease in the body. And so I've always been a very strong proponent of that. Now, there's more stories, that I could tell you now. I don't know what my time is like, but I went to Peru. I always knew I'd go to Peru for some reason as a child, even though I knew I'd go to Machu Picchu. I could see that, but I didn't even know what it was. And so I went there and I had a transformational experience in Machu Picchu. Now, this is going to be a little heavy for you because I'm giving you a lot of stuff real quick, but I actually completed a past life assignment in Machu Picchu. Now, I never would have done it if I'd known I was going to do that, but I was kind of sitting watching the mountains, and a lot of my other colleagues, I was traveling with a group, had taken the long Inca Trail. I'd taken the short Inca Trail because the high altitude was bothering me a little bit with breathing. And so after they came back, I asked if I could go with them, and the shaman looked at me and said, Princess, no. And I didn't know why he called me Princess, but I thought, well, that's kind of strange because he's younger than I am. But anyway, I stayed on that rock for a while. A friend of mine came and chatted, and she wanted to leave. And so we went up these steps, and all I remember is seeing my walking stick, and I saw sand dropping off of it in slow motion. Then I went into a white light, and then I realized I was going head first and backwards over a cliff. Now, I didn't cry out. People who witnessed it said it looked like I was a gymnast. Now, I'm not any lightweight. Believe me, I've always had pretty much meat on me. And they said I balled up into a ball. And all I remember is landing thump on the back and thump here. Should have broken my neck because I fell down on rocks. But I got up and walked away without a scratch. And that's the beginning of another story, which we don't have time to talk about right now. But that experience let me realize that there are other dimensions that we're not aware of. And I hadn't prayed for help, but this was evidently part of my initiation into becoming more serious about looking more deeply into what healing is all about. Now, I forgot to tell you, I also have degrees in psychology and a PhD, except for my dissertation in higher education. So, my feeling now is my destiny is to take all of the gifts that I've been given, all the education I have, all of the resources that I've been exposed to and contacts that I have, and use it to be a part of the evolution of human consciousness, because we've got to come up with a better world than we're in now. This is a good turning point for us. It's been a rough ride over this past year with the virus and everything, but it's made everyone try to reflect, or have to reflect, redo, pivot, all kinds of things, become more faithful, value family and relationships more, because you don't have them when you're isolated with mask on. It's done a lot to prepare the entire world for the possibility of a better way of being. And I feel, along with many others, all of you I hope are included, will be part of what I call spiritual warriors, to help us transform something that has not been working well for most people into something that works well for all people. That's all I got to say. Thank you.